Let's look at the physical aspect first. This is a book, Health Power. This is a book that I have in my library. It's written by these two medical doctors, Seventh-day Adventists actually, and they show how uh, the vegan diet is the best diet to have. And in this book, in page 107, it says it's true that milk is high in calcium, but that isn't the whole story. The dairy industry capitalizes on the concern about osteoporosis and pushes its products beyond all reason. Generally speaking, and paradoxically, cultures with the highest dairy consumption have the highest rates of osteoporosis, a disease rarely found in non-milk drinking countries. The incidence of coronary heart disease in North America is much higher than in non-dairy using cultures. That's interesting. Whole milk and cheese, with their saturated fat and cholesterol, contribute to heart disease. So here it is. It's kind of interesting that those with osteoporosis, who have a higher rate of osteoporosis, are found in milk drinking countries rather than non-milk drinking countries. They have a higher rate, and so it just shows that a vegan diet is best. Now here's another book that I have in my library called Habits That Heal, and it's based on the book Ministry of Healing by Ellen White. And it has many medical professionals' input and real life case scenarios of people and other research and studies that has been done. And in this in this one study right here, it says that a vegan diet, those who vegans actually had a 32 to 44% lower total and LDL cholesterol level than omnivores, people that eat both meat and plants. So it says vegans have a lower LDL cholesterol than those who eat meat and animal based foods. So it shows vegans do have a better diet. And it says in conclusion in this study, in a different study, it says somebody on a plant-based diet tends to have a healthier body weight, lower cholesterol level, lower blood pressure, lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of diabetes, and lower risk of cancer. Amazing. Now, let's look at medically. Let's see how we've seen how physically is best. Let's look if medically if it's best. This is taken from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. I got this quote also from the book that I previously showed you, Habits That Heal. And from this association, it says it is the position of the American Dietetic Association that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. Well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of the lifestyle cycle. So it doesn't matter whether you're a baby or you're an old person, vegetarian, a well-planned one, vegetarian or vegan diet is best. It says including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and for athletes, even those who are doing strenuous activities. So it shows it's best medically. Now let's look at mentally. We looked at physically. We looked at medically. Let's look at mentally. This is also a few books that I have in my library called. It's a 3-volume set. It's called Foods and Their Healing Power. Volume 1 mainly goes over different diets and the pros and cons to each one. So it gives a balanced diet for every single one of them, even vegan. So it shows the pros and cons. Volume 2 shows the how like some in the pictures that you see there in the bottom, it shows the powerful effects that these foods have. All different foods, all different plants, and everything that you can think of. And volume 3 just has recipes. In page 31 of these volumes, I forgot which one. I should have put it on there. It says those involved in intense mental activity, us college students, school, other students, it says are in greater need of certain nutrients. The foods that best meet these needs are whole grains, which is oats in particular, and oil-bearing nuts, especially almonds and walnuts. So while we're in school and we're really trying to grasp these hard concepts and content that we're studying, what will actually help us and to really understand the material even more is if we have a vegan diet. And it's not found in any animal-based foods, but it's mainly found in plant-based foods. Let's look, and there's another page on page 37. It had a study from Loma Linda University. It said that a study at Loma Linda University demonstrated that regular eaters of meat, including poultry and fish, are at twice the risk of dementia as vegetarians. I was like, wow. So, you know how people don't like to differentiate between meat. Oh, they want to differentiate that a fish is not meat or poultry is not meat, but it says meat, which is including poultry and fish. You have a higher risk of having dementia than vegetarians. And I was like, wow. So you're at greater risk if and it's best to have a vegetarian vegan diet than to not have one. And just to let you know, I didn't say at the beginning that this 3 volume set are written by medical professionals, and they did an extensive study on foods and their healing power. Now here is from Ministry of Healing. This is what Ellen White has to say about how it affects the mental. It says those foods should be chosen that best supply the elements needed for building up the body. In this choice, appetite is not a safe guide. You cannot be guided by our appetite, by what we desire. It says, through wrong habits of eating, the appetite has become perverted. Often it demands food that impairs health and causes weakness instead of strength. We cannot safely be guided by the customs of society. The disease and suffering that everywhere prevail are largely due to popular errors in regard to diet. Wow. She continues to say, in order to know what are the best foods, we must study God's original plan for man's diet. He who created man and who understands his needs appointed Adam his food. So God created us. If God created us, he knows what is best for us. It says, behold, he said, I have given you every herb yielding seed and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. Upon leaving Eden to gain his livelihood by tilling the earth under the curse of sin, man received permission to eat also the herb of the field. So God has given man the diet that they need. And what diet is that? It says grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. These foods, prepared in as simple and natural a manner as possible, are the most healthful and nourishing. They impart a strength, a power of endurance, and a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulating diet. So there it goes again. It talks about the strength and power of endurance. That's what we covered in the physical aspect. That even those who are athletes or who are taking part, exercising and everything, it gives you even more strength and endurance to go on, and also it gives you a vigor of intellect, even helping your mind. So this is from Ministry of Healing. Now let's look at emotional and social. As we're going down, it gets even sweeter and sweeter. So watch. This is the only reference that I have from the internet. And from this internet that you see on the screen, it says foods that help control anxiety, stress, anger, and other conditions that lead to depression and other problems are almost always plant-based. As a matter of fact, most plant-based foods are known to help keep negative mental emotional flare-ups at bay. Wow. So we can actually control how much stress we're actually going through. We can actually control how much anger that we have. We can actually control whether we're going to be in a state of depression or other mental, emotional, social problems that we have based on the food that we eat. That is interesting. And if it affects the emotion, it will affect our social life. Wow. Let's look at the scientific aspect. When we look at the scientific, I want you to pay very close attention to what is going to be stated here, because what we covered in the emotional, mental, and social, you will find that it has a direct connection with the scientific. Now, something that is key is that you want to look at the 10 generation before and after the flood. You see that before the flood and after the flood, there was only two differences. There was only one difference that caused people before the flood to live up to 900 years old, and people after the flood to struggle to even reach up to in the 200s or 100s. And that was eating flesh. People before the flood, they did not even eat flesh, but they were living up to 900 years old. But after the flood, because of the destruction of the vegetation and everything, God permitted people to eat meat. You'll find that in Genesis, I believe it's chapter 9, where he permits mankind to eat meat. And as a result of that, you see the declension of our lifespan. Now, this is something that is very interesting to me. As we're still in the scientific aspect, there's a book that is called Goldot, and is written by Lewis Cook and Junko Yasui. And it's very interesting that they took a team of rats and they wanted to see, okay, what is it? They see us in America, and they see the diseases that we have, the moral declension and everything. They're like wondering what's going on here, how obesity and all of that. But then they're like, you know what? Let's take some these group of rats and let's do an experiment on them to see what will really happen. So it's a 3-part experiment, and it's seeing the effects of raw foods versus cooked foods. But you'll see the effects of it. Let's look at experiment number 1. It says a group of rats were fed a diet of raw vegetables, fruits, nuts, and whole grains. And this diet was fed to the rats from birth. Now, they had a total vegan diet. Total vegan diet. Now, let's look at the results of experiment number 1. It says the rats grew into completely healthy specimens. They never suffered from any disease. They never were ill. They grew rapidly but never became fat. They mated with enthusiasm. They had healthy offspring. They were always gently affectionate and playful. They lived in perfect harmony with each other. And then an autopsy was revealed that despite the old age of the rats, their organs, glands, tissues, and all body processes appeared to be in perfect condition without any sign of aging or deterioration. Wow. So physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, wow, like it just has such a big impact on their lives. And if we were to adopt that, we will be living more in harmony with one another. We won't be obese. We won't have any of these other diseases or anything, but we would really have a wonderful, fulfilling life. Now let's look at experiment number 2. It says a second group of rats were fed a diet comparable to that of the average of American diet. So what is the American diet that they fed them with? It says white bread, cooked foods, meats, milk, salt, soft drinks, candies, cakes, vitamins, and other supplements, medicine for their ailments. Let's look at the result of them. They didn't have a plant-based vegan diet. During their lifetime, these rats became fat. It affected their physical. They contracted most of the American society diseases at an early age, including colds, fever, pneumonia, poor vision, cataracts, heart disease, arthritis, cancer, and more. Wow, you think about it. Rats are experiencing these same diseases. Most of the rats in this group died prematurely at early ages. They were vicious, snarling beasts. It affected their mental, emotional, social. They fought with one another. They stole one another's foods. They even attempted to kill each other. These particular rats had to be kept apart to prevent total destruction of the entire group. The offspring of these rats were all sick and exhibited the same characteristics as their parents. Man. An autopsy revealed extensive degenerative conditions in every part of their bodies. Wow. And they were all truly total physical and nervous wrecks. It affected their entire being. Wow. Now, there was a third experiment that was done, a third group of rats. And the third group of rats were fed the same diet as the second group, and all the way until they reached the equivalent of to about 40 years in humans. So they were fed the same American diet, the same non-plant-based diet that Americans normally have. And This group was after they reached the equivalency of 40 years. Uh, at the end, they stopped them on that diet and placed them on a strict fast at the end of this period. They only drank water for several days. They were then given the natural raw diet, the vegan diet of the first group of rats, and the rats' diet was alternated with periods of fasting. So there's great hope. Let's look at the great hope as the results of this experiment. Within 1 month, the behavior of these same vicious rats had changed. They were now docile, affectionate, and playful creatures that were now able to live together in harmonious society. From this point on, they never suffered any illness. An autopsy, which was only done on some of the rats, revealed the same general deterioration as that exhibited in the second group of rats. So after such a certain period of time, they still had the deterioration in their body, but they were being more harmonious and their emotional behavior changed. Then the remaining rats from group 3 lived out the full duration of this experiment, equivalent about 80 years in humans. When they were autopsied, there were no signs of aging or deterioration or disease. Wow. That if a person were to live 40 years on a horrible diet, animal-based diet, that their bodies were literally deteriorating. If they make a complete change, even at the age of 40, and they continue to live out their lives and not to backtrack at all, then they can literally have the same life as those who lived with a total vegan diet their whole lives. That is a great hope. The disease, degeneration, and deterioration of the body parts from the first half of their lives were completely reversed, and excellent health was restored. Praise the Lord. That's amazing. Now we're in our final aspect, spiritually. We looked at physically, we looked at medically, we looked at mentally, we looked at scientifically, we looked at emotionally and socially. Now let's look at spiritually to wind it down. Does this really affect our salvation? Can the way that we eat really affect our salvation? You know, when we eat food gets broken down into blood. The blood circulates through our body and it feeds our brain. It promotes the health of our brain. So if the blood feeds our brain with all the nutrients that it needs. Our brain is what houses our thoughts. Our brains are not our thoughts, but our brain is what houses our thoughts. Our thoughts is what is displayed through our actions. Our actions, when we have repeated actions, it forms habits. Our habits forms our character, and our character determines our destiny. That is amazing. That even food can has an effect on our salvation. It gets broken down into blood. The blood feeds our brains with its nutrients. Our brain houses our thoughts. Our thoughts forms our actions. Our actions repeated forms our habits. Our habits forms our character, and our character determines our destiny. The only thing that we're going to take into heaven is our character. Let's look at a quote. Here it is. It says, "Let none who profess godliness regard with indifference the health of the body, and flatter themselves that intemperance is no sin, and will not affect their spirituality." She said, let no one has that. She says a close sympathy exists between the physical and the moral nature. The standard of virtue is elevated or degraded by the physical habits. Excessive eating of the best of food will produce a morbid condition of the moral feelings. Wow, even of the best of food. So we have to have temperance, we have to eat right, everything. She continues. This is from Counsels on Diets and Foods. She says, "And if the food is not the most healthful, the effects will be still more injurious. And any habit which does not promote healthful action in the human system degrades the higher and nobler faculties. Wow. Wrong habits of eating and drinking lead to errors in thoughts and action. Wow, there it goes. That's what I just mentioned earlier. Indulgence of appetite strengthens the animal propensities, giving them the ascendancy over the mental and spiritual powers. Man, do you know that some of the foods that we eat, the animal-based foods, it actually strengthens the animal propensities that is within us? Just like you saw in the rat experiment, it caused them to be very vicious and like very vicious towards one another just because of the diet that they had. And if we have that same diet, it will strengthen the animal propensities within us, causing us to be angry and have hatred and animosity towards one another. But if we want to live in more harmonious living, then we need to change our diet to a better one. She continues to say, abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul. That's quoting from Peter. Is the language of the Apostle Peter. Many regard this warning as applicable only to the licentious, but it has a broader meaning. It guards against every injurious gratification of appetite or passion. Wow. So that quote right there, that scripture can be applied to our appetite. In Review and Herald, on May 27, 1902, she says this. This is a huge rebuke, even to myself at a certain time. She says, many who are now only half converted on the question of meat eating will go from God's people to walk no more with them. You know, we're preparing for these last days to meet Jesus. And in these end times, there's going to be a crisis that's coming. And she says that even those who are half converted on meat eating, you will have to ask yourself the question, what does half converted means on the question of meat eating? Do not be without hope or without help or anything, even though this is coming from a divine inspiration, from the writing of Ellen White. The thing is that God gives us hope and he gives us the strength. All of his biddings are enablings. And everything that he invites us to, he will strengthen us to act upon it. So if he's calling us to have a better diet, a plant-based diet, he will give us the strength and the resources in order to have it. So I end with this. When we heed the call that God has for us to have the diet that he originally planned for us, we will actually become a light unto this world. This is one of the means that we can become a light into this world. There was a study that was done from a person, a non-Seventh-day Adventist did a study. He went around the world to find what causes people to live so long. Here's what he says in his book called Blue Zones. It says, then we took a team of scientists to each location to know how to identify lifestyle characteristics that explain longevity. In Sardinia, Italy, we found a wine with the world's highest known levels of antioxidants. And in Icaria, Greece, we've discovered ancient herbal teas that lower blood pressure. On the other side of the planet, we find an island where purpose and mutual support networks called Moai explain an extra dozen years of life. That's interesting. In Nicoya, Costa Rica, it's Mesoamerican diets of beans. It's squash and special corn tortilla that is propelling people into their 90s at rates 4 times greater than in the US. And then it says this. Finally, among Loma Linda Seventh-day Adventists, we found America's longest lived culture. They're living about an extra decade longer than the rest of us. How? Part of the reason comes from a diet inspired from the Bible. Genesis chapter 1.